So when we're talking about a single leg cable hip flexion, we're gonna be setting up the cable at the bottom. That's gonna be the same for both variations that I show you. We're gonna do one on a bench, which I quite like, and we're gonna also do one on the floor just because it's almost equally good and doesn't involve bringing a bench over. Now, this is my ankle strap. Many of you will have a similar one. If you don't, your gym will have something similar. And you could strap it to your ankle like you normally do and just clip in like you normally do. However, and it would work just fine. You're gonna execute the movement the same way I'm gonna lay it out here. However, I like attaching the ankle strap directly and then using this little strap that normally goes underneath my foot, and I'm gonna loop my foot through it, and I'll show you that in just a second. Now, I just wanna remind you, you can use the ankle strap as it is normally designed, and you can just put it on your ankle, clip it into the strap, or clip it into the carabiner, and you're gonna be just fine. But you'll see in a second how I'm using it. I actually find it to be notably more comfortable. So whether you're doing this on the bench or on the floor, this is how I would ideally like you to set it up. But like I said, depending on the ankle strap, it's not always perfectly feasible. Not everyone has the same one. And so if you're just using the ankle strap kind of wrapped around, clipped into the machine, it's still gonna work amazing. But if you have this little strap, and you can't really see right here, but you'll see when I get going, I'm gonna put it right around kind of my mid-foot here, and I'm gonna lay back on the bench. And for now, I just want you to look at what my foot is doing. We'll talk about what my upper body is doing in just a second. And all you're doing is you are pulling that knee up into the chest. Now, the benefit of being on the bench is actually that the cable is now pulling slightly down. And what that does is it actually adds a little bit of lengthening, because what we're working right now are our hip flexors, right? And so when we move the leg kind of below where my torso is, kind of like below parallel here, we get a little bit of a deeper stretch here in the hip flexor muscles, right? It's not a big deal. When you lay on the floor, I promise you, it's still gonna work your hip flexors a ton. It's gonna be an amazing exercise. But if you have the bench and the cable is set below the bench, that can be one little benefit there. Now, if you just lay back on the bench like this and you hold the bench and you go through the exercise, it's gonna work amazing. And I've done it like this for a long time. If you feel like laying back when you're doing this, you get a little bit of lower back sensation. Doesn't feel amazing on your lower back. What I want you to do is kind of just crunch up gently, push your lower back into the bench, hold the bench either like this or hold your head, and then do the exercise. And you will find that that kind of lower back arching that might happen when you're like this, it goes away. And so for me, my favorite position is right here where I'm holding onto the bench for stability and pulling up into my chest. Now, if you're doing it on the floor, it's the exact same thing. You're going to hook your mid-foot into the strap there. You're gonna scoop back, put some tension on the cable. I like having my hands out here and this foot planted down, and you're gonna drive the knee up into the chest. If you're doing this on the floor, you might find that putting a small dumbbell in front of the planted foot helps provide a little bit of stability. Now that's gonna be more important the heavier the weight gets. So when I'm doing this for real, I usually put a dumbbell, maybe just whatever, something like a 40 pound, 50 pound plus dumbbell right here, and I'll demonstrate with this plate actually. Now having this plate here really lets me push into it a little bit, not like I'm trying to push it away, but just creates a little bit of a more stable environment, because as I'm pulling up, this cable's trying to pull me towards the machine. And so having something to directly oppose that, right, the plate, right, to help me from being pulled forward, can really add some a little extra stability that, again, might be meaningful, especially as the weight gets heavier. You can also do this when you're up on the bench. You can put the dumbbell on the floor. You saw that I had my foot on the floor. But honestly, whatever you do with this non-working side leg should be a comfort-based decision. Whatever you feel comfortable doing, frankly, it's not gonna matter a whole lot. And if you're not sure, send a form video. If you're thinking about doing this exercise, I strongly recommend that you give it a shot, that you give it some time. Our hip flexors are the most potentially criminally undertrained muscle in the body, especially with how much we train the hip extensors, like our glutes and hams. We don't train the hip flexors nearly as much. And for everyone who's got air quote tight hip flexors, I bet you 99% of you, what you mean without knowing it is that you have weak hip flexors, not tight hip flexors. And so if you want to kind of rectify that and just do something really good for general hip health, you can do this exercise and it will work just great. So to set this up with bands, very simple, same execution. You anchor the band down close to the floor, whether that's on a rack or just anything vertical or anything that you can find to anchor it to. And you're gonna put the band around the midfoot, just like I explained doing the strap with your ankle strap. It's possible that you could use a carabiner and you could carabiner the ankle strap onto the band and then you could use the strap also, but I find that the band works just fine on its own, but you're welcome to do that as well. And then you're just gonna do the same exercise, right? Whether you wanna kind of have your head up like this or back and hold the bench or up and hold the bench here, it's the same thing. You're gonna pull that knee up into the chest. And if you want to do it on the ground, again, it's the same technique. You're just going to put that band over the top of the midfoot and execute it exactly the same.